wonderful people, viewers and subscribers. Like I promised you, I'll be bringing you series of what happened at Emeka Anyaoku Memorial Lecture, the 10th one. And I'll begin with the address delivered by Kingsley Moghalu. Onye na-eme kan si eme, onye na-ekwu kan si ekwu, onye na-eje kan si eje. Ya kan na-akpọ emu. Now, watch the full address by Kingsley Moghalu.
I want to speak to us a Nigerian politician, economist, presidential aspirant 2023, lawyer, author, Ifa Kego of New Kingdom, former United Nations official and politician. He served as Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, appointed by President Umar Musa Yar'Adua from 2009 to 2014. Ladies and gentlemen, to give us the keynote address, Professor Kingsley Moghalu. Put your hands together for this extraordinary Nigerian. Welcome. Anambra kwenu? Kwenu? Kwezi wenu? Igbo kwenu? Kwenu? Kwezi wenu? Oga dula ni mma. His Excellency, the chairman of this occasion, Governor Donald Duke, former Governor of Cross River State, and my very good friend and brother, His Excellency, the Governor of my home state, a state of which I'm very proud to be a son, from Nnewi. You heard the MC say, Ifaka, Ifeke go Nnewi. For the avoidance of doubt, Governor Willie Obiano, our chief host for this occasion. Willie is working. The chairman of the Anambra State Traditional Council of Chiefs and the Council of Traditional Rulers of the Southeast, His Royal Majesty Igwe Nnemeka Achebe Abogidi Obiobonisha, other Royal Majesties here, Ekenemu, my fellow speakers, Senator Bruce, Professor Yaya, and last, I kept him last, not because he's the least, but because he's the man for whom we are here. His Excellency, Chief Emeka Anyaoku, Grand Commander of the Victorian Order of the United Kingdom, Commander of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the Adaziendiche of Obosi, former Secretary General of the Commonwealth of Nations. It is a great honor for me to have been asked to deliver the keynote lecture for this event. A great honor for me as a son of Anambra State. A great honor for me because Adazie Obosi is also a mentor to me personally, a father and a friend. And I'm very, very proud of him. I remember, as I was telling him this morning, that as a 12-year-old young man, early teenage, I was watching the Nigerian Television Authority in 1975. That was all we had in those days, NTA. When they announced his appointment as Assistant Secretary General of the Commonwealth. My imagination was fired that a black man, an African, a Nigerian, should get this very high global leadership position. Of course, he was to go on to even bigger things. Later became the Deputy Secretary General and eventually was elected the Secretary General. Chief Anyaoku led the Commonwealth's 54-member nations. He led the provision by the Commonwealth Secretariat of diplomatic, political, and economic support to all these countries in Africa, in Asia, and the Caribbean with great success over a period of 34 years in the service of the Commonwealth. And before then, a member of the Nigerian Foreign Service, where my late father, Isaac Moghalu, was also his contemporary. It's a great honor for me. I'm going to talk about leadership and the challenge of development in Nigeria. But I'm going to take it from a certain angle. I want to take it from the angle of leadership. Because we all talk about good governance. It's a very popular phrase, good governance, good governance, good governance. But the question is, why are we not getting it in Nigeria? Why is it that after 60 years of independence, we have 100 million people in extreme poverty, and we are now called the poverty capital of the world? Why is it that after 60 years of independence, Nigeria, famous as we are for our stars like Chief Anyaoku, but sadly we're also famous for corruption? Why is it that after 60 years, the countries we started with and we were doing better than or at the same level, like Malaysia, like Singapore, and several other countries, today they are rocket light years away from where we are? And we console ourselves by celebrating those among us who have excelled, as we should celebrate them. But it is not enough to celebrate Chief Anyaoku today. It's not enough. Celebrating things should remind us of the work that we have to do that is yet undone. And that is the work of leadership. We're not there yet. It is leadership that creates the destiny of nations, nothing else. And so I will make some suggestions. I will show how leadership and good governance are linked, and why without leadership, which we ignore, we will not get good governance. We are very fond in this country of scratching the surface of things, but we must always go to the foundation. To the foundation. And the foundation is leadership. So, the failure of leadership that we face in our country today, which Keynote Address identified as the beginning and the end of Nigeria's problems. Simply and squarely a failure of leadership. That's what Keynote Address told us, and he was right. That leadership failure occurs largely because we fail to understand and to prioritize leadership and what it means. It is why we have politics without governance. It is why politics is the biggest business in our country, while real businesses and the economy of our country is being steadily destroyed by leadership failure and incompetence. It is why Nigeria, with 200 million people, has only 5,000 megawatts of electricity. after 60 years of independence, while South Africa, with 50 million people, has 60,000 megawatts of electricity. It is why Indonesia has 210 million people, or Brazil, sorry, and 120,000 megawatts of electricity. The difference is leadership. What's the connection between leadership and the good governance that will deliver us electricity, that will give us good potable water, that will give us health care, that will help us create jobs? Leadership, as the chairman told us today, has to do with the ability to influence people or a unit and influence them to take actions that achieve goals, and by doing so we create progress. True leaders have the ability to envision, to inspire, to motivate, to mobilize people for action. True leaders have the ability and the courage to take calculated, managed risks. Because if you sit in your comfort zone, nothing will change. Everything in life is a risk. You could get up and walk out on that street and be hit by a bus, God forbid. So, these are the things that true leadership requires. You need people who have the character, the sense of sacrifice, that you're not in public office simply for power and to enrich yourself, but to serve the people. And we have one great example in this part of Nigeria, and that was Dr. M.I. Okpara, the Prime Minister of the Eastern Region, the Premier of the Eastern Region. He finished all his years of service. He still didn't have a house he built for himself. And as I believe I'm correct. And it was when he came back from exile that people put together money to build a house for him. We remember people like Julius Nyerere, led Tanzania for so many years, a modest bungalow in his village, because the reason they were there was to serve the people, not to serve themselves. That's what we're looking for. And what is good governance? We measure it by its elements. Number one, effectiveness. Effectiveness. Every government must govern. That means that you cannot be a government and not be governing. You cannot be a government and be giving excuses. You cannot be a government and be talking about the good intentions of the president or the good intentions of the governor. The president means well, but you can put whatever you like into the dash, dash, dash. But the cabal, but is whatever. I don't want to be misunderstood. Those things are not excuses, because the buck stops there. That's leadership for you. And without that leadership, you cannot have effective governance. Effective governance requires transparency. Transparency, government processes should be open to scrutiny by the citizens, by the legislature, by anybody. That's what also helps to check corruption. Number three, good governance requires accountability. Accountability. Governments must be accountable to their citizens and their constituencies. And that is why something happened here, and it happened in Anambra State. A senator from this state did not vote in the electronic transmission issue on the Electoral Act. And a local town, I don't know whether it was Obosi, I hail you, wrote a letter to her and demanded to know why you were absent. That's the people exercising accountability. To her credit, to the credit of the senator, she offered an explanation and an apology. That's governance in action. The people holding their representatives accountable. and their representatives being accountable and recognizing the need for them to be accountable. That might have looked like a small thing, but it was a very big thing. If all the local government areas, if all the town unions in Anambra State and in other states of the country were to do the same of all their representatives in the National Assembly, you have the right of recall, but nobody talks about it. Do we even know about it? That if your representative or your senator is not doing well, you can actually have a referendum and take him out. Many of us don't know this. Number 4, the rule of law. It is the rule of law that makes the difference between a democracy, a real democracy, and an autocracy, despotism. 5, inclusion and participation. All relevant stakeholders and citizens must be included and participate in the government's decision-making process. It also means that in a country like Nigeria that has diverse ethnic groups and religious groups, they should all be brought to the table. They have to be included. Where you have governance by exclusion, what happens is that political conflicts will rise because the excluded will always complain. No one likes to be excluded. And you cannot beat a child and say that the child will not cry. And that is why you have a lot of political conflict in Nigeria today, and even armed conflict. And you now have the rise of secessionist movements, agitations, and sentiments in this country. Because some people are playing the politics of exclusion, which is very short-sighted. Therefore, if you don't have inclusion and participation, you don't have good governance. Finally, efficiency. Efficiency has 2 dimensions. One is the efficiency of the process of governance. That is, how efficient, how quickly, how effectively does the government actually do things? And then the second, which is the resources consumed by the government itself in the process of governing compared to the results achieved. That is what we call cost of governance. The cost of governance in this country is humongous. And unless we deal with it, we are not yet in the business of governance. Let me discuss very briefly what Nigeria's leadership, what leadership must deliver for Nigeria to meet its development challenge. I will not dwell too deeply on this, but there's something called political order formation. How do you form a political community? What are its arrangements? What are its structures? What are its values and what are its norms? That process takes place over hundreds of years in many of the countries we look at today and say they have done well. But in Nigeria, that process was deformed. It was deformed by colonialism. It was deformed by military intervention. It was deformed by the fact that ethnicity became the anchor for the contest for political power in this country. And we have not yet gotten away from it. That is why we have not yet allowed the emergence of a truly visionary leader with a worldview that can rise above the things that divide us. That divisiveness, small views versus world views, it happens everywhere. It's not just in Nigeria, it happens even in every state. It happens even in every local government. You come to Anambra State, you have Anambra South, Anambra Central, Anambra North. Each one of them says we must produce the governor. The reason we are at this stage is because of the absence of a certain level of leadership that makes this less important. But more important will be the capacity of the person who is the governor. But until we get there, we must provide equity for everyone. After all, in Switzerland, very advanced country, but the presidency is rotated. It is a choice they have made. So we too can develop our own system and put it into the constitution if we want. Let's just stop pretending about it. So, the formation of political order is very important. And Francis Fukuyama, a very important scholar, global intellectual, described three things that a political order requires. One, state building, that is nation building. Two, the rule of law. Three, accountability. A nation that does not have any one of this or none of it is in trouble. That state will be unstable, there will be a lot of conflict, and that's what we have in Nigeria today. There is another dimension of political order, and that is something that might surprise you, and that is sex. Sex. Sexual relationships. The relationship between men and women, starting from the home, is also something that contributes to the nature of the political order of any society. And some women, powerful, brilliant women professors in America, have written a book called The First Political Order. The First Political Order. How sex shapes governance and national security worldwide. What was their argument? That if you come to a society where women are subjugated, where women are subjected to gender-based violence, where women do not have property and inheritance rights, where resources are not equally distributed between men and women, you will have conflict and violence. That's what we have in Nigeria today. We see it playing out. We see what's happening in the Northeast, how the terrorists raid schools and take away girls, they kidnap girls and take them to their camps to serve as sex slaves and other kinds of things. This is very important knowledge that we should have and internalize in our own leadership and governance structure. But some people have taken time to study this thing and have written a book about it. It never seriously occurred to me until I read the book that these people have a point. So as we treat our women, if we curse our women, we curse our country. If we love them, we love our country. Now, what all of this means is that the kind of leadership Nigeria needs now and in the near future is one that has a clear understanding of how the weak political order formation in Nigeria is the fundamental development challenge that confronts us, and has a clear vision and plan to address it. Such leadership, which must transcend above politics, must therefore deliver the following three outcomes. One, nationhood. That is to say, a united and capable state with the capacity to secure its territory and its citizens. Two, human development, economic growth, and structural transformation. These three things are not the same thing, but I don't have time to dwell on it. You can come for an economics class later. Three, a restoration of Nigeria's standing in the world. We have many examples of countries where the fundamental reality is that leadership is what has created political and economic transformation and global technological, military, and economic power and relevance. The founding fathers of the United States, including George Washington, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, and Benjamin Franklin, were visionary leaders of men, and they were men of ideas with profound philosophical thoughts that created a democratic system that today is the most powerful country in the world, whether you like it or not. In Nigeria, if you speak like them or you think like them, the citizens will say you are blowing grammar. That is what they will say. But does it surprise you that in every country that has become powerful and made progress, they are led by people who are blowing grammar. Oh yes. You will never make me ashamed that I went to school. Oh no, I will never have an apology for it. I cannot apologize to you in saying I want to be president of Nigeria and say I'm sorry that I'm a professor. I'm sorry that I have a doctorate from the London School of Economics. I am sorry that I've been a deputy governor of the central bank. I am sorry that I have written 4 books and have 2 more on the way. I am not sorry. Because until we confront these things, that ideas rule the world, we will not progress. Politics in Bambo. Zik, Awo, Opara, Tafawa Balewa, a lot of these people were intellectuals. They were intellectuals and people admired them. What has happened to us? Where money has become everything. Some people are so poor that all they have is money. The worship of mammon, as the good book tells us. Money is good, don't get me wrong. But it is a servant, not a master. We don't worship money. That is why the Igbo of Nnewi called me and said, I will give you a traditional title. Ifekego Nnewi. At the conferment ceremony, when the title was announced, I'm from Nnewi, and if you know Nnewi very well, I don't want to say more. When the title was announced, everybody was like, Onye Gande, Onye Ifekego, how, who? But anyway, Dr. Mahathir Mohamad of Malaysia was a visionary leader, as well as a politician. He transformed Malaysia. Sheikh Al Maktoum of Dubai, his vision was what created what we have today as one of the wonders of the modern world that all of us want to go to. Everybody wants to go to Dubai. But in the 60s, they were looking up to Nigeria. They came and looked at our constitution and our federalism. I even read that at some point they even borrowed some money from Nigeria. I don't know if it's true. Today, Dubai has just made a rule that if you're from Ghana, you can come to Dubai without a visa. They have not done it for Nigeria. Dubai is going to Ben Aqua. This is what crying about. It's about the absence of leadership. In Botswana, Saseretse Kaman, who became the first president in 1966, when Botswana was the poorest country in the world, immediately he selected his vice president. From then till today, there's a leadership selection process in Botswana that whoever is the vice president, automatically you know will be the president. And that means that when they're selecting the vice president, they know that they're selecting a president. So the person must meet certain qualifications. Today, Botswana is now an upper middle income country. Small country. They have managed to overcome the resource curse of diamonds. Let me move quickly. But before then, I must give the example of Ataturk, Kemal Ataturk, Mustafa Kemal Ataturk of Turkey, who modernized Turkey, including by making it a secular state during his time. He said we should keep religion separate from government. Closer home, of course, we had our multiple founding fathers, Nnamdi Azikiwe, Ahmadu Bello, Obafemi Awolowo, and of course, Emma Okpara. They took Nigeria forward on a strong path of economic development. We did best in economic development in the First Republic, but they could not successfully manage the demons of Nigeria's domestic politics of ethnic domination. The military interventions of 1966 going forward, although initially cast as solutions to a political crisis, further weakened the formation of political order in Nigeria. And so today, Nigeria faces a conundrum of leadership, a very complex leadership challenge marked by three conundrums. One, us versus them. Two, power and authority versus responsibility. Three, loyalty versus competence. Check Nigeria's politics today. These three things are what are creating the inability for this country to be led to progress. But we are God's children too, entitled to a place in the sun. For how long shall this continue? Us versus them. It is in every state. It is in Nigeria as a whole. Some people capture power and it's a zero-sum game. Us versus them. Leadership versus accountability. Many politicians see leadership just as power and personal privilege. It is not about accountability. We see it all around us. We see it all around us. And one of the problems that has brought this about is our culture. So when we say that the formation of political order was broken, one of the problems was that we were not able to mediate effectively from the traditional institutions of traditional Nigeria and traditional Africa, where we had the divine right of kings. The king could do anything, but today we're in a modern state, supposedly, but we have walked in from the culture of the divine right of kings into a supposedly democratic state. So you elect somebody, immediately he gets into office, he's God. He is God. And you must worship him or her, or face the consequence. He or she can do anything and get away with it. That's why you have no accountability. Then you have the loyalty versus competence. When you combine the us versus them instinct, you combine it with the sense of absolute power and the psychological need to retain that absolute power for as long as possible. This leads Nigerian leaders to place personal loyalty over competence in the appointment of aides and senior government officials. The only person that many leaders feel they can trust is a man from their village. Us versus them. So it leads to loyalty versus competence. Not whether he or she can do the job. And so you have all sorts of mafias. Newi mafia, Onisha mafia, Aguleri mafia, all sorts. It is this thing that is operating. Loyalty versus competence. I'm loyal. And that is what breeds sycophancy. People are human beings. When people worship you, every time they put you on a pedestal. After some time, your head, you begin to actually believe it. Until you leave office. And all those phone calls will stop coming. Because all those people who are worshiping you, they're just in it for something. So, what is the solution? I'm here to try to prefer some solutions. What are the solutions and recommendations to addressing Nigeria's leadership problem so that we can actually achieve development? Number one is that we must recognize that the limitations of democratic or pseudo-democratic political system that we are having today, in which our political leadership emerges through elections, does impose some limitations. So, but given this fact, political parties in their internal democracy must now begin to prioritize leadership vision and governance capacity in the selection of their candidates for electoral office. A lot of these problems can be solved inside political parties if we agree that this is what we must do. This means that we must get beyond the current dominance of politics without governance. And we must move to politics that takes good governance as the purpose of politics. I wouldn't know the difference. There's one politics without governance, and then there's politics for the purpose of good governance. And if you believe that, then you must look for the kind of people as the candidates you present in elections who will deliver. But today in Nigeria, we worship big politicians. They win elections, but they cannot govern. For 22 years, no light, no water. They will tell you that we have to vote for the big party. We have to vote for APC. We have to vote for PDP. Or on a structure. Oh yes, he needs structure. You will eat it. So if the APC presents a chimpanzee, you will vote because it's the APC. If the PDP presents an orangutan, you will vote because it's the PDP. But until we begin to look at person before party, you will not get good governance. You've got to look at the person. If you like the person and you feel that he or she can give you what you need, then you say what is his or her party, and then you go and vote for that party. And if enough of you do that, you will be surprised with the results that will happen. There is nothing written in the stars. It is only us that have allowed our minds to be defeated by the political overlords in this country of Nigeria. And they don't even want the election results to be counted transparently. So, number two, we need to focus on political education. We have to educate our citizens on how to be effective voters and informed voters so that they can select their own leaders with knowledge, and forethought. Political education is very important. Number three, non-partisan actors such as elder statesmen, including Nigeria's former living former heads of states and government, people like Chief Emeka Anyaoku, traditional rulers like Abogidi, Yobi Obonisha, clergy, civil society, professional leaders, they must now begin to play a more robust role in leadership selection in this country. They can do this through public statements, they can do it through endorsements, they can do it through quiet recommendations, it doesn't matter. But they cannot stand by the side and be watching, and then we all suffer the consequences of bad leadership selection. They are citizens too. Oh yes. Every country must fashion its democracy according to its own unique environment. There's nothing wrong. This is why I argue that traditional rulers should have a stronger role in governance in this country under a restructured Nigeria. Oh yes. Recently, we've seen an example. General Babangida, former president of Nigeria, he gave an interview as he was turning 80. It is the talk of the country. Why? Because he dared to go there. He said, I am visualizing a leader, the next leader of this country. And he gave his own view. It's a personal view. But he has the right to give it. And as a former head of state, I suppose you would listen. And he said, I believe it should be somebody who is versed in the Guinea economy. It should be somebody who has friends across the country. It should be somebody who is a politician and can play the politics of persuading people. It's a very reasonable recommendation to me. Because if you have a president who does not understand economics and tells you that I will make the Naira 1 Naira to $1, meanwhile the Naira is going towards 1,000 to $1, you know that there's a Kele somewhere. But if you put me there, it will be different. Because I know. Oh yes. I know. As we say in the Navy, a bicycle, bicycle man. So, number 4, leadership and governance training and education should be formalized in political parties and in the institutions of government across the board at leadership levels. I was having a conversation with Kofi Annan when he was alive, my former boss and very dear friend and mentor. And I was telling him about this question of leadership training. He was smiling and stroking his goatee and looking at me. When I finished, he smiled. He said, Kingsley, you know that African leaders don't like to be told that they have to go for training. He said, call it a leadership conference. They will come. So we will be having a lot of leadership conferences in the future. Number 5, and finally, the constitutional reordering of Nigeria, returning Nigeria to true federalism, including the devolution of powers to regions, will improve leadership and governance by bringing governance accountability closer to the people. If you are in a region or a state and important powers have been devolved to your governor or your premier, it is more easy to hold that person accountable than somebody who is in Abuja. So if you bring it closer, the people will become more empowered because you're closer to the people. This is why restructuring is so important, among other reasons. Let me conclude my keynote lecture. Nigeria's development failures after 60 years of independence, with our country ranking at or near the bottom in every index of corruption, healthcare, education, human capital development, policing, state fragility. In all these things, we are boarding last or very close to last. When you have all that, I say that we can no longer continue to shrug this off or to explain our condition with excuses. The Asian developmental states were also colonized by the Western powers. Why is it that they have made it within a period of 50 years, but we are still at the bottom? They had leadership, and they had development-obsessed leaders. Their leaders were obsessed with development. Don't think that it's only in Nigeria you have corruption. You have it everywhere in the world. You also have it in Asia. But in Nigeria, the corruption of Nigeria is that the contract will be awarded, the politicians and the big people will take 80% of the money and leave the contractor with 20%. In Asia, they will give the contractor 90 or 95%. They may take 5%, just small. Things get done. They are not perfect, but things are happening. Development is taking place. In Switzerland, all human beings are the same. The only thing that makes a country less corrupt than another is accountability. You will go in for it. If you break the law, you pay the price. I was driving one day in Switzerland, in Geneva, and I came out and I saw bedlam. I'm like, is this Geneva or am I in Lagos? Everybody was maneuvering. Horns were hooting. You will never hear that in Switzerland. What's going on? And I came out and asked, why? The traffic light monitor broke down. The human being came out immediately in the Swiss. Everybody was trying to maneuver and get ahead. And you had a Lagos situation in Switzerland. That day was when I knew that I just smiled. I said, every human beings are all the same. But in Switzerland, you break the traffic regulation. Nobody, you won't see any policeman stopping you. You will just get a quiet slip in your mail. Just try not to pay that money, that fine, by the due date. Things will start happening to you and you'll be wondering where they're coming from. You will know that they have all your information. Oh yes, I once brushed a car in Switzerland. I looked, I didn't see the owner. I didn't know what to do. So I drove off. A few days later, I got a mail in my box referring to that some camera caught me straight. And I had to go and explain myself. So, let's understand that, with countries like Malaysia and South Korea, that we were powered, now far ahead of us. With 100 million Nigerians living in extreme poverty, which was where I started, we face an urgent leadership crisis that we must confront. Politics as usual will not do the job anymore. We must accept that our democratic politics of the past 22 years, since 1999, has not yielded, cumulatively speaking, any significant dividends of democracy, other than we might say we have the right to speak our mind. You can say whatever you like, but even that is becoming a problem. They just banned Twitter a few months ago. So some people are not happy even for you to speak your mind, and we may be moving more and more towards an autocracy. Press bill, National Broadcasting Corporation. You see all this tightening of the screws on free expression. So we must therefore return to the fundamentals. And what are the fundamentals? Leadership, not just politics, is the main driver of the progress of human societies. We must, as a nation, move from the divisive politics that marks us today and that is making us poorer and weaker collectively, and turn our politics into a search for real leadership that can unify our country and take us to prosperity. I thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, wonderful, wonderful. No wonder you are chosen to be the deputy governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria. Yes, I am very sorry for the spelling mistake of calling you Ifa Kego. It's actually Ife Kego. Huh?
Thank you for watching this far. It is quite expository, and I believe it is clear that you need to start helping this good governance ministry to move to the permanent side. All you have highlighted is what we've been saying on this platform. All you need to do now to start with is to share this video. Let this message go around. Let every Nigerian see and hear this, because their freedom depends on this. I'm signing out. I'm also to repeat as the voice of the people, the voice of God, the voice of our ancestors. Stay safe. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, drop a comment. Let me have your opinion. I'm signing out. Bye-bye.